The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. Hosted by Dave Hondell.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Stage Door Show tonight. This is Dave Hondell. I have a very special show. With me tonight, I have Hall of Fame bowler Norm Duke. Hi Norm, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing just fine, Dave. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again too. And I also have Director of Photography and one of my colleagues, Todd Holman. How you doing, Todd?
Doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. And both of you down in Florida. I'm in Washington, D.C. for the Memorial Weekend. We're about to go home tomorrow. So I am not in my usual studio setup for our viewers out there, but that's okay because we have two special guests with me tonight. So that's okay. So Norm, I'm going to start with you. You've been bowling since, 1983. You were a teenager when you started bowling, correct?
Yes, sir.
Wow, and that's incredible. So you're still on the tour, and I know that you had two wins last year, and your 39th and your 40th. So, with all the coronavirus going on and the situation that we're in right now, obviously it's affected every sport. And as far as bowling goes, where are we at with the bowling right now, and are we going to see bowling back in the near future?
Yeah, in fact, I think bowling is going to be one of the first sports to come back, because we can do so many made-for-television matches that do not have fans, and it can be quite safe. So I think, in fact, I know that in June, we're going to have a couple of made-for-television bowling shows on the Big Fox. Look, everybody's starving for content. They're putting up the 2015 British Open for us to watch instead of live content. And we're going to try to accommodate our fans. And I think we can do so pretty safely and produce some really interesting matches on TV.
Now, have you been able to get out and do some practices? And, during all this, have you been able to get out? I know you're over in the Claremont Lanes down in Florida there. Have you been able to practice at all during all this?
Not a ball. I haven't thrown a bowling ball since March 3rd. I came off the floor in Las Vegas, and they announced that we were going to postpone the 3 events that we were working on, and that we were going to televise the major without fans. I did the commentary for that telecast. It was really weird, Dave, because there were no fans, and you don't get the participation and the ambiance, the response from the bowlers. So we finished that. We learned a little bit. Coley Edison, our new CEO with the PBA, has done a fantastic job, along with Fox, our new broadcast partners, and they're producing some good stuff. So I think that they're going to be pretty confident that they can come back and do a really good job. The thing is, I don't know how good the bowlers are going to do, because we haven't been able to bowl, none of us. So even though it's a made-for-television match, and you would think that we're ready, we have to bowl a lot to keep our hands and our arms big enough to handle the bowling ball. So it'll be a little bit different for us, but I'm sure we'll get through it.
Now, I know, I don't know if either of you have watched the Korean baseball on TV, but ESPN has been some. Have you been watching that?
Who didn't watch it? You got nothing else to watch.
That was funny because they had cutouts of the crowd, and behind it was. I thought it was pretty funny myself, but it was interesting, definitely entertaining. Awesome. Maybe they can do that on the pro bowling tour.
Do you know how long it would have taken Todd Holman to film a cutout with the crowd in the back? Because hey folks, this guy's a perfectionist.
Yes.
If you were to see like a restroom sign in the background, he's the first to notice. So if there were a fake crowd, I don't think it would have went off. No way.
Shallow depth of field. That's all I have to say about that.
Have everything
blur
blurry
everybody
in the
out in the background.
Well, hey Todd, I know we've worked on a lot of projects together. And matter of fact, we met at a golf tournament that Norm was one of the participants in, a celebrity golf tournament at Bella Colina down in Montverde, Florida. And, I think we all kind of met each other on the same day on that golf course. And found out that Todd was actually from a couple cities over in Minneapolis from where I grew up, and we were about the same age, and it just was started a great friendship. And since then, I think we've worked on, I would say, a dozen projects together, music videos, and Norm's instructional video as well, which I kind of wanted to talk to you both about. But Todd, let's go back to that instructional video that we worked on for Norm. And, just to set up, like Norm was saying, you're definitely a perfectionist, and that's what you need to be as a director of photography. But even on a project like that, like a sporting instructional video, talk about what you do as a director of photography. And in the industry, it's DP, it's director of photography when you hear that term. So Todd, tell us about what a director of photography does on a set.
Well, the main thing that I have to do is make sure that I am matching the vision of you, the director.
Yeah.
So the director, the vision, where are we going with this? Who's the audience? Those are the type of things that need to be determined before we actually start the shoot. So once I know that, like for example, with the Learning to Bowl competitively DVD, we knew it was going to be an upper level quality broadcast. It wasn't just going to be something that was shot in your average bowling alley where you saw the beer signs and all the crap in the background. That just wasn't going to be allowed on this. It had to be a high level production, even though we didn't have a huge budget to work with. So we had to do a lot of work to make it look like we were shooting in the studio, even though we were actually shooting in a regular bowling alley. And with a good crew and with good cameras and of course, being aware of our backgrounds and being in control of all that, that's just the start. And then from there, we have to weigh in, okay, we have a time limit. We have to be considerate of the talent's time, the whole crew and production's time. So we kind of have to look at, well, do I worry about this one little thing that does bother me versus, well, we got to get the job done. And that's where the challenge comes into play, because sometimes in post you can go ahead and fix it, but composition, you can't. As of today, the technology to fix composition or an angle or a camera angle or what have you, it's not affordable to the average person. It's out there, but it's tens of thousands of dollars a minute to recreate a face or an expression, where with us, if we shoot it right the first time, and that's kind of the way I've been taught, is you shoot it right the first time, and then you save a lot of money in post, you save a lot of time trying to figure out how to work around it. So it is a balance, but it's critical to get it done right as best as possible the first time around.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And also Norm, when like Todd was saying, as far as the preparation goes for the production piece of it, it's also important, obviously, as the bowler, you have a certain amount of lessons that you want to get into this actual production that we're doing. So again, preparation beforehand, and I'm sure that you have a progression of how you wanted the lessons to go on the video. So that's important as well. And so everybody needs to work together when it comes to production like we did for you. So talk a little bit about the preparation that you have to go into, put into as a bowler to make sure that your lessons are making sense to your viewers.
Well, I think first and foremost, Dave, the biggest challenge that we had is the bowling center and their hours of operation. So when a bowling center is open, you don't want to film stuff where you have people walking around in the back, people opening the doors, ambient noise, all kinds of distractions in a bowling center. So what our team, you included, Dave, what we did was we filmed overnight. And so the bowling center would close around midnight. We'd go in there and work for 2 hours just on the setup. And what we were doing is given a black curtain so that nothing really competed with my image. And we had to manage all backgrounds because I'm being filmed in motion, also stable. So for 2 hours, and then when we finally got, let's say the first minute, we say roll tape, everybody was so tired. I remember we were just yawning, and I did a version of one lesson once. I'll never forget this. When at 4 in the morning, it's kind of difficult to do it without a mistake. And I was mistake-free, finally. And I looked over at Gary Tolley at the time, our partner, and he said, no, we got to do that again. And I'm like, why? Why on earth would you? He said, Norm, you were lifeless. There was nothing in there. I didn't even hear what you said. You were so boring. And so we had people in the back saying, now look, this doesn't need to look like it's coming out at 4 o'clock in the morning. These people are going to be watching this when they're wide awake. And there were so many challenges that I didn't foresee that y'all did such a great job with. And it taught me a lot about production, and it made me now appreciate just how much there is involved in a telecast when you go to the real shows.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. You know, when I was watching a PBA bowling event the other night, and just, you know, watching not only, you know, you have the pressure of bowling good, but you also have, you know, I don't know, 1 or 2 microphone packs on your back. And you also have the crowd that are just feet away from you, and you have cameras in your face. How do you do it as a, you know, I mean, obviously you've done it for years, you're kind of used to it, but, you know, from somebody like me who's not a professional athlete, to have the cameras in your face, you just kind of, you know, zone all that stuff out. And how do you go about, you know, playing your game with all these distractions, basically?
Yeah, because we have jib arms that come out and follow us around, and they move beside us sometimes when we're bowling. I try to personalize every camera. Like, I know that foul line camera right there is Charles. Mm-hmm. And Charles is one of my favorite cameramen of all time. I don't look at it like that is a camera that is showing me people. What that is Charles. And if I want to play around with Charles, I can. I absolutely can. It's live TV, but there's nothing saying that I can't engage that person. And then in doing that, I'm engaging the whole audience. So if I can say, over here is Kimberly with Jack, because I know Jack is cameraman there, and he's going to be with Kimberly. I know that Charles is there. We got a jib arm here. I try to put a name to that jib arm even. That way, I'm now performing in front of the same group of people that I always do. The only difference is, and Dave, you know this, is the lighting. I mean, when they turn those lights on, it'll barbecue you. You get suntan sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're on there. And so when the lighting comes up, yeah, it's real, and there's nerves. There's nerves, and it's scary. But the more you get acclimated to the environment, it is different than, of course, our first 4 days of bowling. It's the show.
Yeah, it's a show, and it must go on. Obviously, it's on live TV. And then, you know, Todd, you know, speaking of what Norm was saying, the camera angles and the jibs and so forth, as a director of photography, I mean, all those angles make sense and to you. So how do you decide where you're going to put, you know, the camera? Is it background? Is it more like, you know, photojournalism where you're just getting the shot? You know, do you look at anything artistically and something like that, or do you basically just want to get the shot itself and make sure you're not missing anything?
Well, of course, it depends on the production and what we're doing. For example, with our shoot, absolutely. There are so many elements that were so important because I wanted to have the absolute right angle to show his movement, to show his expression, to really focus on what Norm was doing. And at the same time, I didn't want to show anything in the background that could be distracting to the viewer.
Right. So
along with the camera movements, when we had our jib going, we had an amazing, I mean, oh man, what was her name?
Melissa Lynch.
The jib arm, yeah.
Mark and Melissa Lynch are amazing.
Right.
Jib operators, and she did an amazing job. She's been doing it a long time, so it was real easy to work with her because I could say, hey, you know what, this is what I'm looking for. Oh yeah, I know exactly how to get that. Bam, she got it. So it was a combination of having the right camera crew where I can convey my message to them and they know exactly what I'm getting at, what I really want from them. Because, you know, it's one thing to have a pretty picture and have it all look great, but how do you show that action? Where's he going to end up? Where's he starting? Where's he going to end up? How is the flow going to go? We don't want to have certain things cut off. If we don't have the right angle of the fluid movement, it totally disrupts what he's trying to teach. And then I have to think about the post-production. Well, how's it going to look in post? What do we need to change in post? And now we're adding the graphic interface. So we have to make sure we have the proper space and the proper framing to add those extra graphics. So there's a lot going on to think about, especially at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and Norm, you know, speaking of what Todd was saying, you know, making sure that he understands the post-production aspect of it too. Now, you spent a lot of time with Keith Jones when you did the editing of it. Now, talk about the editing, because I know you guys spent hours together making sure it was done just right, because when you're doing lessons like the ones that we filmed, as a bowler, I would imagine that you want to know the nuances of everything you're talking about, not just the motion, but how Keith, added the lines and the maybe in the lane, and especially with bowling, you have different lane patterns that you talked about, and you spent quite a bit of time talking about lane patterns. So how important is the editing process in something like what we did?
Well, it was the first time I'd ever done anything like it. So it was a learning process for me. I had no idea what Keith was capable of doing, what it would look like. So we had to experiment a little bit. And I'd say, can you make this line so it shows where my ball path is? How about you add a line and make another color? How about we put X's here so that we can frame where my thought processes were?
Yeah.
In the production, and Todd asked so many questions about this, is in post-production, what is this? What does it need to look like? So Todd would have to film what it is that our vision was. And then afterward, we marry these 2 or 3 or 4 components. In most cases, it was 3 or 4 components. And it looked perfect because Todd knew what he was doing to begin with. He knew what we needed in post-production. I didn't. So therefore, a couple of times he would say, we need to get it this way. And I didn't know why. In post-production, Keith and I are sitting there and I would go, aha, now I see. This is why it takes professionals to do it. You don't just hold out a camera and then create a story while you're throwing a bowling ball.
Right.
You need the cameras to show your facial expressions, whether there's beads of sweat, whether there is whether you're struggling to get something done physically. The people want to know that, but they also want to hear the story. They have to hear the message as well. So my job in post-production was to make sure that the message was getting across. Keith's job was to make sure that it was fluently done, that it looked great, and that it didn't meddle with my story. It didn't mess me up in any way. And so the the filming of the video was so important in that regard. And it made post-production easy for us.
Yeah, and talking Todd, and Norm was mentioning, you're unrelenting when it comes to getting the shot that you really want, and that's one of the reasons I really like working with you, because sometimes I want to strangle you, because I was like, we just want to move on, but you know what? When it's all said and done, you made the right call, and as a director, I appreciate that, because we need a director of photography on the set that's able to tell the director, because I think sometimes the director is waiting, is kind of maybe focused on, what do we have to do next? What do we have to keep this moving? We have to go on to the next shot. But as a director of photography, you know what you're shooting and you know what you're filming, and the fact that you are unrelenting in the fact that we need to get the right shot. I mean, I appreciate that as a director. So, again, you've been doing this for years, and you talked about Melissa and Mark, and I know they're both, they've been both in the business for a long time, and the more you do, the more you know what's working and what's not going to work. And it's always good to have more material than not enough, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the worst thing, is undershooting.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I was going to mention, is not only the pre-production is probably one of the most important parts of this whole thing, especially with our video. If you don't have proper pre-production, the production itself is just not going to flow well.
Yeah.
And that's vital. And then when you're on set and you're shooting, like Norm mentioned, I know what we wanted to create, and I understand the time constraints, and that's kind of why, I would challenge you at times, Dave. And I don't have a problem doing that, because it was good at the production.
That's right.
And getting those shots, you can't just go back and say, "Oh, we missed that. Darn it." Well, what do you do if you're done with it, if everything's said and done? Now, luckily, we had 2 other nights that we sat that set everything up, and we were able to look at stuff. But it's vital to be able to have that shot list, work with the director, understand that we're all on the same team, and we might have to take that a little extra time. We might not be able to take that break or a break at all, and being willing to sacrifice our personal time to get the shot, to me, is what's most important. And, the other thing that I forgot to mention is sometimes you got to be willing to risk a camera. Because I remember a couple of times where, I know you're the best bowler in the world, but hey, I put one of my cameras out there for you to bowl right next to it. And I said, you know what? It's for the production. I might lose a camera, but I'll get an amazing shot.
Yeah.
I've never hit a camera, by the way. I'm still over on the camera. Hey, do y'all remember when we first started that? We're talking about the pre-production. I didn't have any. And then we get there and we had this big signboard that I could write anything I wanted on. And all my shot list had to do with the title of each of the 20 separate lessons, right? But there was nothing to go with it. So Todd asked me real early, he says, okay, let me see your shot list. Well, it's in my head. And he didn't like that at all. He didn't like that. And then once we got going, I figured out how I can get it done without showing him a list. But before we started, everybody was looking around like, Norm, you should have been a lot more prepared. I would have had to write a book to get as prepared as I'd need to be. Then we would have had to have a telestrator. Then we would have, and I said, you know what? I can't just read. I can't see well enough to read what I'm writing on if you all remember that. Yeah. I couldn't focus in on what I was writing anyway. So what they allowed me to do was, okay, here's the shot list. Here's the title. Go, Norm. And then after we did one or two of them, it became obvious how they should be done with regard to me and what shouldn't be done. And without that, at least 2 or 3 hours early, I wouldn't have been able to come up with any kind of pre-production whatsoever. I do remember that Todd was a little frustrated about that. He didn't know how in the world we were going to get it done, nor did I. I'd never done it before. But then in the end, guys, if y'all remember, I spent $30,000. I went to Canada for my first DVD, and I didn't even put it out. I thought it was trash. It did not meet my expectations. I went in knowing a little bit about that, all of those mistakes, but I had no idea the team that I had assembled with y'all, nor how to make y'all comfortable or happy. But when we got finished, I am so happy with that DVD. It's crazy. To this day, it's 11 years old. I still love it. And I'm really proud of everybody for that.
Yeah. And, you know, I'll give us a shameless plug because that is still right now on Amazon, one of the most highest rated instructional bowling videos that they have on Amazon still. So again, kudos to Todd and your team and everybody and Norm and everybody that was on set. We didn't have a big crew. I mean, that's the one thing I think in production these days, you know, I've been doing the music videos for a long time, and, you know, a lot of people think you have to have hundreds of people on a set to make it work, and you don't. As long as you have good people, you know, a small crew can get it done. And I think we did. And again, you know, I'm looking forward to the next one. So, you know, I want to move on to something that I find entertaining, because your trick shots, Norm, you're one of the best trick shot artists in bowling. And there was a time that you were actually on Late Night with David Letterman. And I want you to talk about that experience, because I think our viewers will really get a kick out of that whole experience. And I think you've set up a lane, or they set up a lane for you on 54th Street or something like that.
Yeah, we were not upstairs in the studio, but we did set a temporary lane on 54th Avenue or 54th Street, whatever it was. But the problem is we didn't have the grid underneath it that we needed. We shipped it a pilot, let's say, to where the grid underneath was every other. So it's like every 4 feet, you need a cross member, right? Well, we had every 8 feet. And our lane was 3 section of panels, and then of course a machine that doesn't work. It wasn't a machine, it was just a pit basically. Right. And we'd have kids set up the pins in our pit and we'd throw it. Now we didn't have a better, you know, I guess equipment to facilitate that, but we were called in, you know, hey, we need this tomorrow. So we flew everybody out, and I remember doing trick shots there, right? And Tommy Jones had one where he throws it over a chair, and it lands on the lane, and then he rolls a strike, but he has to throw it over a chair. And he throws it pretty high when he did this. Okay, so I'm on the ear mic with David Letterman, and he's upstairs, and he's saying, Norm, what's going to happen? And I said, well, Tommy's going to throw it over this chair, and it's going to hook around this thing we put down there, and then he's going to throw a strike. Well, he throws it up in the air, and it lands, and it puts a big hole in the lane right there, just bam. So Dave says to me, he says, well, Norm, that didn't look like that was supposed to happen. I said, Dave, no, it wasn't. He said, well, no. Is that going to interfere with any of your other shots, you know, because now we have a big hole there? And I said, well, yeah, Yeah, I guess it will, but we'll just throw around the hole. So for the rest of the show, we were throwing over and around this big chug hole, like a big divot, It was awesome. I enjoy that. And I will tell you this, it's not every day you get to be on David Letterman, right?
Right.
And especially if you're a bowler. I got to do that day. I got to have fun. I got to have, it wasn't a competition at all. It was just, let's see if we can entertain people. I so love that.
Wow, that's amazing. No, those are fun stories, and I know that your trick shots are still getting views a lot on YouTube, and I show all of my friends, and it's just amazing. I have a couple of Facebook questions for you, if you don't mind, Norm, from Facebook here. From Tom Steeman up in St. Cloud, Minnesota. We have, how long does Norm hope to continue bowling? And so being that you've been bowling since 1983, and also, how special was it to win your 39th and 40th title last year?
First of all, I bowl for a living. It's my job. So I'm going to bowl as long as I want to work. When I decide not to work anymore, then I'll put bowling down. I've done it full time. I've thought about nothing but bowling for going on almost 40 years. When I lace them up for the last time, then I'll probably just back off from the sport altogether, because I'm not going to appreciate my talents. I watched Arnold, I watched Jack Nicklaus into their 60s and 70s. They both lost quite a bit, and it has to work on you. So far, I've lost a little bit. Yeah, I have, but I'm still winnable. And as long as I feel like I can win on the PBA tour, well, then that's my job. My job is to win bowling tournaments. So let's hope that it's going to be another few years, maybe a year or 4 or 5, who knows? A lot of that depends on how fast I deteriorate as far as the talent. And it's happening. Look, I'm 56 years old, and I'm bowling against kids that are 19 and 20 like I was a long, long time ago. It's difficult. Now, last year I put together 2 stellar weeks where I defeated bowling's #1 player in the world, Jason Belmonte, to win the Indianapolis Open, and then backed that up by defeating another two-handed player, one of the youngest stars on our tour, Anthony Simonson, a ripe old 20 years old. Back-to-back weeks playing the 2 of the 3 of the best currently. And I got to win back-to-back. So how significant was it? I think it's more and more significant as time passes. Yeah. I don't think it registers yet what an accomplishment that was. If you figure the oldest person before that to win back-to-back was me at 34. And I did it again at 56. That's amazing. So that's pretty incredible. And you know what? A lot of luck happened there. It's not like I just walked in and I ran people over. No, I had to navigate both formats, and you're talking about 12 days of competition. So there was a lot involved, and it's so meaningful I can't even explain it. In fact, now what I do is say, well, how do you top that? And you have to create something that you're striving for. Otherwise, you don't have that inner desire to go do something that you feel like maybe no one else has ever done or can do. I put those lofty goals up there. Sometimes I create stuff that it's impossible. But what I'm doing is I'm putting my goals so far up there that if I barely miss, I'm fine. I love it.
No, that's great. And, the other thing is I have a question from Eric Backos from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Hey, Norm. Eric from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 2 questions for you. Who did you not like to face in match play? And second of all, what's your most memorable match? Thank you.
Well, the guy that had my number before I really figured it out, he retired, but it was Dave Ferrara, one of my great friends from Kingston, New York. They own a bowling center up there, and he's in the Hall of Fame, and he was a monster. There's no doubt about it. But it just seemed like when he and I played, he had ultimate respect for me, and I was definitely coming into my own. He knew it, but he was relentless, and it just seemed like I could never get him on television. I remember one time I started with the first 8 strikes. So, if I get 4 more in a row, I bowl 300 and I get $100,000 bonus. And if I miss, I lose to Dave Ferraro because he had a strike spare sheet. And I said, man, this guy is, I can't shake him. Yeah, Dave, I'll never forget that man. And then what is the most memorable? You know, there are a number of memorable times. You know, I won 3 majors in a row once. That's never been done other than that occurrence. And when I was standing on the approach, I remember feeling as if I wanted everybody on earth to experience that feeling. And I said, well, Norm, you're the only one that gets to. You're the only one that has ever experienced that feeling. But I wanted everybody to at least know it. What does it feel like? Oh, it was such a genuine satisfaction, I guess. But then the most memorable throw in a shot was definitely making a bucket because I'd left it. All I needed was a mark, and I left 4 pins, and I had to spare it for the U.S. Open. But that U.S. Open got me the Grand Slam. It got me to bowling's immortality. Yeah. Oh, I was so nervous when I left that bucket. I said, oh, there you go. You just threw it away. And I knew I just squandered so I felt it. I felt the loss. I felt the extraction of the chance. And then I went, no. Oh, no. And I grabbed that ball and I made it just like I did it for a living. And I'll never forget the 4 pins toppling.
Yeah. Amazing. That's amazing. You know, and how many perfect games have you rolled, Norm, over your career?
In the 80s on tour only. I don't count, you know, any practice or league or even tournaments that are big tournaments, but not PBA tour. It's too hard to keep up with. So I just go with whatever the PBA says it is. It's somewhere around 80.
And Todd, how many do you and I have?
Well, if we're talking about bowling, I think it's a big fat goose egg for me.
I'm just happy if I get over 100, you know, so.
You and I both.
Well, guys, I can't thank you enough for being on my show tonight. You know, I really do appreciate it. And, you know, I know Todd and Norm, both of you guys, you know, I just love working with you both. And again, looking forward to the next project, and say hi to all my friends down there in Florida. I miss everyone down there. I miss Florida. You know, I love the Northeast, but I'm definitely looking forward to someday going back there. So, you know, say hi to everybody. And again, thank you so much for joining the show tonight.
Well, Dave, we got to get you down to Florida to work with Todd and I. And he and I have done 2 or 3 things together here recently because we have so many podcasts. There were the Country and Western Music Awards presentation, and then we had the high school bowling, the National High School Bowling Awards thing. He comes over, sets all the equipment up, tells me what to do. It's awesome. We need you, though. We need the director.
Well, I'll be back there hopefully sooner than later. So
absolutely, Dave. I got to tell you, it's always been a pleasure working with you. And when we did that video with Norm, it was amazing. I know you and we went back and forth, but it was at the appropriate times.
Oh, for sure.
You kept
it's also 4 a.m.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, Dave was amazing. Amazing director. It's my favorite director to work with.
Well, thank you, Todd. I appreciate that. It means a lot. Thank you. All right, guys. Well, again, thank you again, and we'll be talking to you both soon.
All right. See everyone. Take care, Norm and Dave.
Take care, guys.